Okay, great. All good. Okay, bye. Hey, this is Dr. Alonso. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Dr. Alonso, thank you so very much. We can hear you and we want to welcome you here from the city. Thank you for being here. I have submitted some questions that people have asked, so hopefully you have them printed out.
Yes,
Some
I
of them
do.
were interesting and exciting, and if you can screen share,
Yes.
we are live on YouTube, and I think there is a fabulous audience. Um,
Okay.
and we appreciate your time.
Well, then we will start right now then. How's that? Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm going to put it on presentation mode. And speaker's view. Okay. So I'm going to share with you some COVID information, some facts. These are accurate facts. They're not made up on the internet like some people get information. So I have no other purpose in sharing this information other than to give you correct information and factual information. I respect people's view on either side, whether to vaccinate or not vaccinate. I form no judgments. My only purpose is to give you the facts as they exist. So I'm going to start my first slide by talking about our national status, where we are right now. As you can see, when we started back in January of 20, our cases started going up. At this point, we really didn't know how to treat COVID very well. A lot of people were dying here. The hospitals were really doing everything they could to, they really didn't know how to treat COVID yet at this point. They had never seen it before. So a lot of people were on ventilators and not getting enough saturation and so forth. So this was a very hard time. And then things started getting better. And as soon as they started getting better, we kind of relaxed what we were doing. And so our number of cases started going up. This was our highest point in July here in Palm Beach County. It was July 17th. And what happened here is that the summer started. And so people started going out. They had parties for the 4th of July in the summer. And so our cases went way up. We put emergency order into place. We were masking. We were doing all kinds of things. And the cases started going down. Well, as soon as they started going down here around August into September, once again, we let our guard down. We thought it was all over. The problem with this virus is that you really can't let your guard down until you go all the way down. And we really didn't go all the way down. So sure enough, by November, things started going up and up and up. And we had this huge peak that reached its highest peak January 11th. The vaccines came here and towards the end of December, people started getting vaccinated. And wow, did that make a difference? I mean, people were getting vaccinated faster than we could provide the vaccine. And the cases really started coming down. But somewhere around here, they kind of stopped because most of the 65 and older had been vaccinated. So then they lowered it from 65 and they lowered it down to 50. So some more people got vaccinated, went up a little bit, and then it came down a little bit. And then the, again, we kind of came to a stop. And so then they lowered it all the way down to the 12-year-olds. The Pfizer went ahead and said it could be all the way down to 12 for Pfizer and 18 for the Moderna and the J&J. So our numbers went way down again, once again, because of vaccinations, all the way to July. And sure enough, just as it did back here and back here, those cases started going up after the 4th of July. The only problem is that whereas at the beginning, after the hit at July 17th, it started going down. This time it did not go down in July, and it kept climbing. All right, all the way till mid-August. And we hit our peak in August. And since August, and it has been going down, it's continued to go down now through October 21st, which is the last one. This information all comes from the CDC. If you go, or if you just Google COVID, CDC COVID tracker, you'll see all this information that I'm giving you here. It's updated every couple of days, and all the information from all the health departments across the state give you these charts. And you can also look at your community. So you can put in Florida, and you can come in and look at Palm Beach County. You can see this data that I'm showing you. So this isn't a mystery. So far, we've had 43,997,504 cases reported of COVID in the United States. And, you know, that's a lot of cases. In some areas, we have more cases in other countries, third world countries. We are in a high population, and so far, 76.4% of people above the age of 20 have gotten one vaccine, and 66% have been fully vaccinated. This is the number that we should be looking at for vaccination, the fully vaccinated, right? So we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. So my next slide shows what we look like and what's called community transmission. That is, what is the risk of your community of being at high risk to get the virus, right? So this is very important. Right now, almost all of the United States, with the exception of California and Connecticut, are at high risk as states. Now, Puerto Rico is the only one down to moderate. We got down to moderate last June. We were actually going to go all the way down to low, but we didn't quite make it. So how does Florida look now? This is how we looked on September 29th, where we had only Henry and Glades that had gone down one level to substantial. And this is we look like now on October 8th, where this chart was made. So we're still in high. All the metropolitan counties, those are counties with more than 1 million people population. That's Dade, Broward, Palm Beach. This is Martin, St. Lucie. And then as you go up, you have Indian River, Brevard. This is Okeechobee, Henry. I'm sorry, this is Henry. This is Glades. I think this is Sarasota. And then you go up, this is Flagler, Duval, Nassau County. And then this is Tallahassee. They're the same as us. They're in high risk. You have, I think this is Wakulla, Franklin, and what's the next one? Gulf, I think. I'm not really good on all my counties, but these are the only ones that have gone down to substantial. So big difference, okay? The numbers are really going down. We got to keep this going. How are we going to keep this going? It's got to be due to vaccinations. Why? Why are the vaccination the only tool that's really going to work up? For this reason. This is the proportion of the Delta virus, the Delta variant. I'm sorry. Now, what's a variant? A variant is what all viruses do. They change just a little bit so they can become more contagious. They can jump from people to people. The purpose and the only purpose of the virus is to jump from person to person in terms of the coronavirus, just like the flu. This is the same type of pandemic that we had in 2009, where we had the H1N1. I hope people remember that. But it wasn't as severe. And the reason it's so severe is because of this variant that has been very, very dominant here in the United States. Some other countries have had other variants, but this one makes up 99.9% of all the variants in the United States. So for all practical purposes, the variant is what's causing two things. It's more contagious. So there's more virus in your nasal cavity when it comes into you and into your throat. When you speak, those viruses go out towards whoever's next to you. And that's why we use the distancing of 6 feet. If you're 6 feet apart, usually by normal speaking or sneezing, you're not catching it. If you're doing other things that make you project further, for example, if you're sitting at the bar getting your tequila drink or your beer and you're shouting to the guy across from you to get you another one, then you're speaking loudly and you're spreading the virus along further. That's why crowded spaces, especially indoors, are so dangerous and such high risk. And so there's no way people inside a bar that are drinking are going to be wearing a mask. So you just have to realize that you're very, very high risk if you put yourself in that situation. The other thing the variant does, besides being more contagious, is that it's causing breakthrough cases. That's a case where a person has been vaccinated, but they catch the virus anyway. In a normal person, if you catch it, especially with Pfizer, we've seen even more cases with Pfizer, which is why now Pfizer has a booster, and I'll talk about that later on. But if you catch it, chances are you're not going to go to the hospital and you're not going to die. That's the purpose of the vaccine. So the vaccines are working. It's just that because of this variant, some people are getting that breakthrough situation. But the purpose of the vaccine from day one has been so that you don't die and you don't have to go to the hospital. Now, some people have gone to the hospital, and actually some people have died. Why? Because they're at higher risk, because they have immunocompromised or they have secondary risks such as diabetes, kidney failure, problems with the heart, other issues that then make them more complicated and they can't fight it off even with the vaccine. So the vaccine is not a guarantee that something bad won't happen to you or that you could die. It just lessens that probability significantly, way, 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 way low. Very few people have actually died with the vaccine. So my next slide shows you where we are at right now. This is the information that goes out every Friday. Right now, we have a positivity of 5%. That's good. We want to be below 5%, but our cases per 100,000 is at 117. The other thing is that the total people vaccinated from this date of last Friday was 74% of the people over 12. I have another chart that updates it as of yesterday, and it's gotten a little bit higher. So we're making progress. But why are these two things important? I'm going to show you one more slide, and then I'll get into that. This is the number of cases per week. So back in July, when it went up, we were seeing 5,000 cases here in Palm Beach County per week. Okay, so that's a little under 1,000. We were going crazy. We thought we could not handle anymore. We hired all kinds of contact tracers. We had everybody who's working 24 hours around the clock. We were seeing 5,000 cases. At the peak in January, we were seeing 6,000 cases per week. Again, we thought we could never see more cases than that. We hired extra people. We were working as hard as we could. Well, things went down. They went down all the way down to June. We thought that was it. COVID was over. We did it. But look, we didn't go all the way down. Remember in the first slide, I told you you're supposed to go all the way down before you give up? Well, we didn't go all the way down. We took away the emergency order and we took away the mask order. So what happened? Up it went. Now look where we went at mid-August. We were at 9,000 cases per week. And we had less people to work with. But what has happened? We've all learned how to work smarter. The hospitals learn how to treat patients better. That's why it's called the practice of medicine, because we have to practice to get it right. And we just had more information on how to treat these people. So even though way too many people have died, the hospitals really were at a surge. And when I say a surge, I mean there were no hospital beds available. People were actually waiting in a rescue truck that came in for a heart attack, waiting in the fire truck, waiting for a bed to be able to be examined in the emergency room. That's a life and death situation because people end up dying that don't need to die. People couldn't be transported from small hospitals to large hospitals. It was really a mess. And due to the incredible and the heroic work of nurses and doctors and respiratory therapists and people in the kitchen making food and everybody that's involved in the hospital, we were able to overcome this large surge, and our hospitals did not fail us. In other states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Texas, they actually had to ask for medics to come in and create what we call field hospitals. That's what's usually done, like when there's earthquakes and hurricanes. And so these teams, these medical army teams come in and set up hospitals to save people. And that had to be done in multiple states. The national federal system had to come in and create those. Luckily here in Palm Beach County, we did not have that problem. Broward and Dade also were able to get through it, and we're now on our way down. So right now we're at the level that we were back in the beginning of October when we started going up. So the question is, are we going to continue going down, or with winter coming, flu season coming, the holidays coming, travel coming, and a lot of snowbirds coming down, the question is, are we going to keep going down thanks to the vaccines, or are we going to climb back up? And if we climb back up, is it going to be a little curve, or is it going to go all the way up like it did here? So we got to keep our fingers crossed. But the most important thing that we have to do is to make sure we continue to vaccinate people. Vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. That's the most effective tool to get rid of a virus, and especially a respiratory virus like this one. So right now, as of yesterday, we have 181 cases, new cases, and the average per week has been 220. So way down from 9,000. We're down to 220 per week. That's why we're way down here. Okay. So a big difference. I'm sorry, this is 2,000, but we're actually only having 220 right now per week. Okay. That's down by 72 more cases. This is as of today. This was at the end of September, beginning of October. So we've gone down even further. We're way down here now. So this is the two things that are measured. One is positivity rate. We were way down in, like I said, in this week of June, and we were the highest over in August at 17.9 positivity rate. The other part that we measure is the 100 per 100,000. So you can see down here that in June, when we were really low, we were at 44.4% of cases per 100,000. Our peak was 672, and now we're at 113. Now, why am I saying these? Because this is how the CDC and epidemiologists look at the risk for transmission in a community. They take these two numbers and they say, well, where are you on this scale? For number of 100 per 1,000, anything above 100 is high, and then these numbers go here. So right now at 117, we're above the 100, so we're in high. The bottom one for positivity, we're at 5%, which would be low. But if there's two indicators that are different, you take the highest one. So the highest one is going to be 117. So therefore, Palm Beach County is at a high risk of community transmission. And when the CDC tells you you're at high risk, you're supposed to be wearing your mask. You're supposed to be watching your distance, staying away from crowded places, and of course, getting the vaccine as soon as you can so that you can be protected against the virus. And if you do get the variant and you do have a breakthrough, you don't end up in the hospital or dying. This is where we are in terms of vaccines. So at this point, as of the 11th, we're at 75%. So we went up 1 more percent from Friday. 66% of our folks have been vaccinated completely, and 9% still have only 1 dose. They're waiting to get their second dose. So the bottom line this blue line that went higher than the blue line, the light blue, this is the 12 to 19-year-olds. So those are school kids. They're at 57%. The next group, 20 to 29, is at 54%. The green line is the 30 to 39. They're at 64%. And we want to be above 70, right? So the 40 to 49 has finally hit 72%. This orange line is the 50 to 59, and this light blue is the over 80. They're stuck at 80%. The over 80 are at 80%. And why? Because some of them are in nursing homes or can't get out or haven't gotten the vaccine. So some of these folks kind of, they went up very quickly along with the 70 to 79, and then they just kind of plateaued. Some of them are in nursing homes, and nursing homes have not been very active about vaccinating. And the ones that have been very, very active and continue to go up is the 60 to 69 and the 70 to 79. These folks are 92 and 93%. All right. So when you see this total vaccinated number, it's a little hyperinflated because of this very high 90% up here. So this group down here, these four numbers that I have here, these three have to get above that 70%, hopefully up to the 80%. When that happens, then we'll have immunity in the community and the virus can't jump from person to person. That's why the vaccines are so important. So eliminating misinformation. You had some very good questions. In addition to the ones that you gave me, I also have added some other ones here. The first thing is that the fact that this vaccine was called warp speed, that means they had a very bad PR company agency working for them. You don't call anything in medicine warp speed. That's a bad name. People don't trust that, right? They made it too fast. It can't possibly. That would be a good name for a movie or, you know, a Star Trek movie, but not warp speed. The emergency use authorization is something that occurs in an emergency when you need to treat people and you can't wait for 10 years to do the full FDA studies. Also, during normal circumstances, you have to have enough people get the disease in order to test whether the vaccine works or not. The way you test that is you give one person the vaccine, the other person gets just saline. And you wait for the two people to go out into the community, do whatever they do, and then you see who gets sick and who doesn't. If the people that get the vaccine don't get sick and the one that have the saline gets sick, then you're showing that your vaccine works. You have to have thousands and thousands of those people. So what happens in a pandemic? First, you can't wait for 5 or 6 years to do this, right? Because you need it right away. The other advantage of being a pandemic is that a lot of people are getting sick at the same time. So those numbers of people that you need to prove that your vaccine works happens more quickly. And therefore, Pfizer was the first one to be able to demonstrate that their vaccine worked. They did all the studies that they had to do. They did not skip any studies in doing this. And they actually tested more minority groups than they had ever tested before in any study. There was a special effort, especially because this was a pandemic worldwide. They couldn't just test it on white boys. They had to test everybody. So they made a special effort to include all minorities, all underserved communities, everybody. And so this vaccine was tested more than any other vaccine in the history of vaccinations. As a matter of fact, this will be the new future of vaccines. As a matter of fact, they just had an announcement a few days ago that, I don't know how many of you realize, but malaria has been one of those illnesses with a virus that has never been able to create a vaccine, and it kills more people than any other virus in the world. And they finally, using the messenger RNA that Pfizer and Moderna used, they were able to actually create a vaccine. And the first one that they gave it to was a little baby that was dying from malaria, and the baby survived. So that is how you use the emergency order, the emergency use authorization. It happens during every pandemic and during an emergency. So there's nothing strange about this. This is usual procedure. politics, unfortunately, got in the way of this. Like I said, they didn't use the right terminology. They didn't explain it correctly. And so a lot of people started having mistrust in what was being said and what was being done. We also, one of the other misinformation, and that we have not experienced long-term consequences of the vaccines. And so people saying, well, you don't have enough time to study it. And that is true. We've only studied this vaccine now for a year and a half. However, billions of people, more than 4.5 billion people have actually been vaccinated with this vaccine, and they're doing just fine. I got 3 shots. I got Moderna. I don't have any horns coming out of my head. I'm not a magnet. Metal does not stick to me. I've had knives and stuff put on me. They don't stick to me. There's no chip in it, I promise. If you're worrying about people tracking you, your cell phones are doing that very effectively. They don't need to put it in a vaccine. So your phones are the ones that are tracking you, not the vaccine. And so please get rid of those misinformations that are out there. The other very, very important misinformation or actual false information is that the vaccine causes infertility or that it's not safe for your baby. That is absolutely wrong. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. Any woman who is thinking of giving birth, any woman who is pregnant, their obstetrician will tell them immediately to get vaccinated. If you get vaccinated, you actually give the baby the antibodies through your breast milk. That's how babies become immune when they're born, is through your breastfeeding. It's very important. It's a very important part of starting your immunity when you're a baby. So it's the opposite. You should get vaccinated. There have been several stories of women who have died. One of the first women that died here was she caught it from her husband. Her husband was in the hospital. 2 weeks later, she was in the hospital. She died on the north end of town. The baby died with her, and the husband was never able to visit her. He was still in the hospital recuperating. So tragic, tragic, tragic situation. Right now, what they're doing, if women become pregnant, because when you're pregnant, your immune system goes down, you're more likely to catch the COVID at that time. And if that happens, what they're doing is doing a C-section early to try to save the baby, but very often the mom does die. So please don't make that mistake. Another misinformation is that the vaccine causes the virus. It cannot cause the virus. Why? Because there's no virus in this vaccine. Live vaccines like measles can give you the symptoms and you can expel some of the virus. And if you have someone who has cancer or is immunocompromised, you have to be very careful with them at home. And they warn you if you get that kind of vaccine. This vaccine has no vaccine. It has no virus in it. It's a messenger RNA. It's a little piece of genetic material. It's a messenger RNA. It gives the message to your white blood cells to create antibodies against the protein spike that surrounds the virus. That's why it's called a coronavirus, because it looks like it has a crown. So there's no other material in that. A messenger RNA cannot incorporate into your DNA. So it will not change your DNA. You won't change sex. You won't change your color. You won't change the color of your eyes. It can't do any of those things. Okay. It just helps your body make a natural immune to the protein spike. The monoclonal therapy does the same thing, but those are man-made antibodies that are given to you as a shot. And I'll talk about the monoclonal information. The other part is that, so I answered those two, that there are chips. I answered that already. Another thing that has started now is saying that more people have died from the vaccine than from the virus. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. The number of people who have died, if you divide it by 4.5 billion people, is minuscule. It's less than a decimal point. I mean, it's like 0.0006 or less. So that's absolutely not true. Churches have commented saying that it's, some people are saying that they claim that their church claims that it's the sign of the devil or the sign of the beast. If your church is saying that, I respect you. You have your beliefs, but think about it. It doesn't make sense. Most churches are saying that you have a moral obligation to take care of life and to take care of yourself and to do everything you can to protect yourself, to value life. And therefore, what we want to do is to save lives. And the virus is killing us, so the vaccine can save us. And so therefore, we should take the vaccine. But again, if that's your religious belief or your church is telling you that, then I respect your values, but try to think about it, because the Bible also says to beware of false prophets. And some of this misinformation that's going out there is being done on purpose. And who are they targeting? They're targeting minorities. They're targeting Hispanics, African American, Haitian, Jamaican, all the minorities. So be careful who's telling you this information, because it actually may be the very people that are trying to wipe you out, to to discriminate against you, because more minorities have died than anybody else. And especially the Black community has been hit by this very, very hard. The Haitian community has been hit by this very, very hard. So before you start taking some of this information, please think that who has a reason to get rid of you. And so some of this information that's being promulgated out there is to hurt us, not to inform us. The most reliable source for the information is by far the CDC. You can go to cdc.gov and then just put in COVID, or you can go to this particular website that I have here, which they can take down maybe and give it to you. It's the COVID, it's the CDC COVID tracker. You can also just Google CDC COVID tracker, and it will take you to all this information that I have said. You can see it for yourself. So the booster and the third doses, I'm just going to explain this real quickly because it's very confusing. The boosters are for people who are healthy, but need a booster because the Pfizer vaccine seems to be waning off. In other words, decreasing its effectiveness after about 8 months. That has not happened with the Moderna or the J&J. So for those people, if they're 65 and older, the FDA said you can get a booster. Or if you're 18 and either live in a long-term care facility, you have underlying medical conditions, or you work or live in a high-risk settings. And for high-risk settings are settings where you're in constant contact with the public, like for example, firefighters, police, healthcare workers, teachers, grocery workers, anything where you're in high volume, and certainly any kind of long-term care facility, corrections. So there's a lot of people that fit in there, bus drivers, transportation folks and trains, planes, all those people, if they got Pfizer, can get a booster. You got to ask for the booster. The other term is third dose. It's exactly the same little bottle of vaccine, but when you ask for a third dose, it's only for people who are moderately to severely compromised their immune system. So in other words, your immune system can't make those antibodies as well as someone who is not compromised. Those people should get the third dose of the Pfizer or the Moderna. So you have to go ask for a third dose if you're in this category. If you ask for a booster, you will not get it. They'll tell you that's not out yet. So that can be given 28 days after your second dose. This one, the booster, you have to wait 6 months after your last dose. So those are for people. What they mean by severely compromised means you had an organ transplant, you have HIV or AIDS, you're actively on chemotherapy. In other words, you're being treated for cancer, or you're taking immunosuppressant medications such as people who have rheumatoid arthritis that are taking meds therefore their body can't make antibodies as well as others. The other treatment that I talked about was the monoclonal therapy. That's when you go in, if you're positive, you get COVID, and before you get sick that you have to go to the hospital, you can go over at Westgate Park Recreation Center on over at Westgate, the park there. You can go in, it's free, and you get 4 shots, 2 in your abdomen and 2 in your arms. And that stops you from becoming more severely ill, because your body then, through man-made antibodies, will create these antibodies and give you the power to fight it off and not have to go to the hospital or die. Now, one of the things that I don't understand is, why do they get the monoclonal if it's man-made antibodies, but they don't want to get the vaccine that's natural antibodies? So anyway, I don't understand why people want to do one or the other, but anyway, that's what the monoclonal therapy is. So we have to remember that the Delta is causing this predominant variant across the United States. It's very contagious and there's breakthrough. Vaccines remain the most important tool to stop the spread and save lives. The hospitalizations have decreased, they're handling it now, but we still have to worry about the fact that it's still the most people coming to the hospital unvaccinated patients. 84% of the people in the hospital are still unvaccinated, and we need to be prepared in case we have another surge in the winter with the holidays approaching and the virus from the southern hemisphere migrates north. So we're going to have more of the virus coming our way. So please get vaccinated, protect you, protect your family and your community. And we can do this if we all do it together. Let's do everything we can to get the word out, erase the misinformation, speak the truth, urge your friends and your colleagues, that's a misspelling, sorry, to get out and get vaccinated. We can definitely do this all together. And if you have any questions, let's go ahead and ask them now. Do you have anything in the chat?
So nothing in the chat, just the things that I've sent over earlier, Dr.
Okay.
Alonso.
All right. I think I answered them all.
I think there might have been something about a COVID. I can pull up the.
There was a question that said, is there DNA or blood products? I answered that one. There is no DNA or blood products in the vaccine at all. It's just a little piece of the messenger RNA wrapped up in a little piece of fat, of lipid, and that's what goes into your arm. In the J&J, the difference is instead of the messenger RNA, they use the common flu virus, the adenovirus, just a little genetic piece of that. Again, there's no virus in it. And that little piece does the same thing, wrapped in a little piece of lipid, and that goes into your arm to create those antibodies against the protein. Your thoughts on vaccine cocktails, meaning taking COVID vaccine and or booster along with something like a flu shot or steroid treatments. There's no contradiction of taking the flu shot and the vaccine. We were waiting before, but since the two things are completely different and have two different components in it, there's no danger in going ahead and getting the vaccine and your flu shot all at one time. You're going to have it in both arms. So that means both your arms are going to hurt, because when you take a vaccine, the fact that you're making antibodies makes your arm hurt pretty much. It's like, you know, in high school when the boys used to go and punch you because they really liked you. Okay, you're laughing, so it must not just been me, right? That does happen. It hurts like that. It's like somebody punched you in the arm. You can also have a little bit of fever. That is normal. You can feel a little tired. That's normal. I didn't feel tired because I've been so tired for a year and a half. I didn't notice it. I got like 99.9. That's as high as my fever went. And I didn't lose any work at all. I continued working. I didn't take any Tylenol because I wanted to see what symptoms I would get. If I had taken some Tylenol, probably my arm wouldn't have hurt as much, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't deal with. I knew where it was from, so therefore I wasn't worried about it. Some people get fever and some people get a little more sick with the second shot, a little bit more fever and, kind of feeling fatigue and run down. So in that case, I recommend that people try to take it on a Thursday or Friday so that they have the weekend to recuperate and they can go back to work on Monday. I mentioned where you can get the accurate details, cdc.gov. I mentioned the church leaders that say it's the mark of the beast. I mentioned, the one about Dr. Fauci. They say we can't trust him because he reported that AIDS came from Haiti. Dr. Fauci is 80 years old, and Dr. Fauci actually has been working with HIV and AIDS since 1984. He's probably one of the best known physicians in terms of what he has done for AIDS and HIV. So I guarantee you that Dr. Fauci did not say that AIDS came from Haiti, because nobody that I know, even I was a resident when I in residency, even I as a silly resident knew that the viruses come from other places and that this virus did not come from Haiti. So I can't believe for one moment that he would have said that. President Bush actually awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom for the highest civilian award that is given in the United States for his work in HIV and AIDS. So please don't believe that one. This gentleman took a lot of heat. He has been telling the truth and taking the heat for it. We have changed some of the things that we said. Like in the beginning, we said we didn't need to wear masks, and then we realized we didn't. So as we learn things, we have changed some things. But basically, he has been telling the truth the entire time. As we have more knowledge, I think we see things different, and we've made some adjustments, but we haven't changed what we said from the very beginning, that we need to have enough people vaccinated so that this goes away, and that the virus needs to be taken very serious. This is not a common cold, and we have had over 700,000 people die already. 710,423 people have died. That is more people in a year and a half that have died than in all the 4 years that the Civil War took place. So think about that. So this is not your common cold that goes away on its own, that you can be a big superhero and just fight it off on your own. Some people can, especially younger people, but young people have died too in the ICU. It's very sad to see people dying in this country when we have a free vaccine, where other countries are begging for the vaccine and they don't have it. So please think about that. I think that's all the questions. Can you think of anything else that I didn't ask?
So I was just looking, and I think if you could address the Merck COVID pill, any information you can put on that might help answer some things in the future.
Yes, the Merck pill is basically the monoclonal therapy in a pill form. I think that's very useful. Again, if you get sick and you are at risk for going to the hospital, or at risk of the vaccine, if you've been vaccinated and you get a breakthrough, you can take that type of monoclonal therapy. Pill form is definitely better than getting 4 shots. And so that will be very useful to have in our tools of things to fight the virus. But the number one thing to fight the virus is to get the vaccine so that you're protected and you don't catch it to begin with. Okay.
So on that one about getting the vaccine and being protected, the question is about antibody tests and how they might play a role in keeping the identification of vaccine up in status and needing things. Do you see things moving in that direction?
There are antibody tests that you can do now. I got the 3rd dose of Moderna because I had a kidney transplant back 4 years ago. I had done my antibody test. My antibody test was at a proper level. My white counts were good. My lymphocytes were good. And I felt great. So I really didn't think that I wasn't going to take a booster to take away a vaccine from somebody that needed it. But then I got a call from the University of Miami. They said, everybody with a transplant, get your third dose. So I decided to be a good doctor and not disobey my other doctor's orders, because doctors tend to not be very good patients. So I try to be a good patient and follow my doctor's orders. And so I went ahead and got my third dose. But yes, the problem with the antibody testing, it is not as precise as knowing that you have gotten the vaccine. So you're much better protected knowing that you have the vaccine than just relying on that. And your natural immunity, like if you early on when we didn't have the vaccine, we noticed that people that got COVID got it 2 or 3 times, and each time it was worse. So your natural immunity is not as good as the vaccine.
And you might have mentioned this, but the only other thing that I see that was on a kind of collective group of emails and submissions was that some people believe that Bill Gates and government officials are trying to sterilize minorities, especially to reduce the population.
Well, the ones reducing the population are the ones that get you to believe that the vaccine is not good for you, because they're actually killing you. They're the ones that are causing the death in the minorities. Bill Gates has lots of money, and I don't think he has any reason to go against minorities. As a matter of fact, Bill Gates does a lot of charity work. He and his wife do a lot of charity for underserved communities and so forth. So I don't think he's the one doing this. This is propaganda that's being done by outside of this country and by those people who don't want you to get vaccinated. The minorities are dying because they're believing this nonsense. And I don't understand why you believe an internet statement, but you don't believe what the CDC is saying. I don't know why everything in government now is bad. And I get it. Nobody trusts anybody right now. I understand. But I don't know what else to do than to give people the facts and hope that they can at least see that they're being tricked, because people are dying. They're dying because they're not getting vaccinated. And it's the minorities that are not getting vaccinated. So that to me is proof that you're believing misinformation. That's all I can say without, getting too emotional about this.
Well, on that, I think that note is perfect, because we appreciate this in English, but know that you're going to also be doing this 100% on the 20th at 5 p.m. in Spanish.
Yes.
And we are fortunate to have community partners that are going to spread the word. So we will hopefully have lots of questions, and Juan Pagan from the American Hispanic Chamber of Commerce will facilitate, because I'm embarrassingly not bilingual.
Well, I'll make some mistakes too. I won't let my mother see it, because she will correct me and tell me, mija, ¿cómo puedes hablar el español tan malo? All right. I hope everybody understood. If you need more information, especially for the Creole speaking, we have information in Creole. All our pamphlets, everything are in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. We've done a lot of outreaches out into the Creole churches. Genesis in Boynton Beach has been phenomenal. They've been knocking on the churches, and their ministers and so forth are all behind this, pushing the vaccine. So please, think about it. And I hope as many people as possible listening to this who have not been vaccinated get vaccinated. And those of you who are vaccinated, convince your other friends to get vaccinated.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Alonso, for taking some time out. And we have this recorded, and it's on our YouTube channel. So we hope that this gets played over and over and over again.
All right, that's a deal.
Very happy
to
see you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.